Hello, I am Carlo Bustos, Educational Programs Leader at Proformative, the online community for corporate finance, accounting, treasury, and related professionals. I would like to welcome everyone to today's webinar, Drive Strategic Planning, Budgeting, and Forecasting in the Cloud. Are you stuck in Excel hell just trying to collect the budget or forecast numbers? Are your review meetings with managers more about finger pointing than taking ownership of the numbers and results? Is there just no time to focus on the analysis that produces insights that matter? Mainstream enterprises are turning to Host Analytics Planning Cloud, a modern cloud-based application to drive strategic financial process efficiency and improve enterprise performance. Today's webinar will walk us through a product demonstration. I would like to thank Host Analytics for helping us make this event possible and their generous support, for which helps us deliver this webinar at no cost, just like everything at Proformative. And now a few housekeeping items before we get started. First, I'd like to welcome you back to Proformative. Just a brief overview on Proformative for those of you who may be new to our community. We are the largest growing online community of finance, treasury, accounting, and related professionals. We are an ad-free, noise-free community where we encourage and expect peer-to-peer collaboration. Check it out at proformative.com. And now just a few event notes to remind everyone. The links to today's presentation and the recording of this webinar will be sent out to all attendees within 24 hours of the event. The presentation is currently posted at proformative.com/resources if you'd like to download and follow along. We do encourage you all to ask questions as we go through today's webinar. We will hold a Q&A session in the back half of this event. For whatever reason we do not get to your question, we will work with the speaker and sponsor to respond to you directly post the event. You can utilize the questions box in your GoToWebinar panel to ask questions. And lastly, you will be asked to take a short survey today regarding this webinar. We greatly appreciate your feedback regarding our event today. As we always strive to improve the ROI we offer you, our community. Okay, so let's get started. I'd like to introduce our speaker today, Brad Move. Brad is a senior solution consultant at Host Analytics, a SaaS vendor specializing in software for Office of Finance. Prior to joining Host Analytics, Brad worked at IBM, Clarity Systems, AIMCO, and Accenture in various roles. Brad brings years of experience in finance, accounting, and software to his job, which is useful for helping companies understand the value of software. Brad has a BS degree in accounting from Colorado State University. In his home state of Colorado, he enjoys mountain biking and spending time with his wife and 2 children. Take it away, Brad.
Thanks a lot, Carlo. Hello, everybody. My name is Brad Move, as Carlo mentioned, and I'm with Host Analytics. Thanks a lot for attending today's presentation. I'm going to start today with a few slides, and then I will get into a demonstration. But I want to introduce to you Host Analytics and what we are and what we represent. So what is Enterprise Performance Management? EPM is a suite of financial applications, primarily used for budgeting, planning, forecasting, but also for the close management process, financial consolidations, and disclosing results to external stakeholders. Close and disclose, if you will. Also including in reporting, obviously, is to executives, managers, the boards, department managers. And last but not least, we include analytics for strategy setting, alignment, and measurement. So organizations buy EPM solutions to deliver actionable insight, drive accountability across the organization to speed through their strategic financial processes. We can, all this leads to helping transform your business. So our customers, in particular, gain many benefits from Host Analytics: speed, accountability, insight, ultimately leading to company-wide and personal success. So in this slide here, some of this is information from Aberdeen Group. They compared Host Analytics customers to the best-in-class companies out there. And they ranked them by a survey, and they looked at 159 different organizations, 34 of which were Host Analytics customers. And when you look at it, Host Analytics customers could close and report 60% faster than the best-of-class customers. Now, we bring a lot of speed to our customers' processes. For example, CEA Global Education Solutions, one of our customers, they reduced their budget cycle from 12 weeks to 3 weeks. And 12 weeks really isn't unheard of. It might, from my experience, from talking to prospects and customers for years, 12 weeks is a pretty average time for people to complete their budget process. But to reduce that to 3 weeks is quite significant. Another customer of ours, StyleSite, a New York website company, they have a big focus on how they're doing. So they used to just do one plan update a year, and they were too busy to look at the numbers beyond that. But what they found with Host Analytics was the ability to look at that plan, update the plan, analyze the plan, and make sure they're on track 4 times a year. Now, we have other customers that do it monthly and so forth, but they're an example of a company that this was able to free up time to really analyze the numbers the way they wished. Now, another factor when you look at EPM, Enterprise Performance Management, is really involving the enterprise and bringing that accountability down to everybody that needs to partake in the process. Otis Spunkmeyer, a customer, they make cookies. I'm sure you've heard of them. But they were really centralizing their process to 25 key individuals. With Host Analytics now, they've opened that up to 125 plan owners. And that really drives that accountability down to that level. So those people know what they're planning for, what they're shooting for, and it really can help either control cost or help, drive revenue, or both. So there's different aspects of what you might look at in the P&L and the balance sheets, but the plan owners now could take that responsibility. Now, Aberdeen Group looked at it across the board, and people that using Host Analytics had a 12% increase in their budget accuracy. And really, what is a budget? And sometimes it's a guess. It's an estimate of what you're going to do, but you want to make it as accurate as possible, and that's why you introduce forecasting, so you can control and adjust as you need to throughout the plan. But if you could be 12% more accurate, that's a huge advantage. Now, that last bullet point there is another customer, Miriam Technologies, but they were able to reduce their audit costs by $200,000. And that's because of the processes and a system in place for their close and disclose process. The auditors had less to scrutinize and had more confidence in the control processes that they put in place with Host Analytics. Now, lastly, on this slide, it talks about insight. Well, what in our regard, what we mean by insight is the users of our system had more visibility into what the numbers meant and what it meant for the company. So in general, people using Host Analytics see a 10% increase in profitability. But in particular, Bama, a company that distributes food for McDonald's and so forth, they actually saw product profitability jump by 45%. Because of the way they could analyze the numbers and plan for those numbers, they saw a lot of opportunity based on looking at product margins instead of just looking at units and trying to drive revenue. So they focus on margins and realize what products increase their margins the most. Another great example of that is Thule. They make the racks for your car, for your bike, or for your skis. They're based in Sweden, but they also have operations in the U.S. But with Host Analytics, they recognize $1 million savings in inventory. How'd they do that? Well, they had the metrics and the numbers there to indicate that they were overstocked, demand wasn't appropriate for how much inventory they had, and they never had that visibility until they had Host Analytics. They ran some analytics and some reports against their data, and they discovered that in their analysis of the numbers. And I did mention it's not a small thing to consider, but people that invest in Host Analytics, that buy Host Analytics, implement Host Analytics, are very often promoted for they're recognized for their success. Now, it's not all Host Analytics, I grant you that. They're smart people. They've done some very good things. But, like Paula Pouliot, excuse me for that, but she's from Martin Bauer Company, and she's been promoted several times, and she hangs her hat on a lot of the success leveraging host analytics and the insight that it gave her within her company. Now, a lot of people wonder what the cloud is, what is software as a service. Well, I'm here to tell you that host analytics is that type of offering. You use a web browser to access host analytics, but there's been companies that have been transforming in the cloud before us. Salesforce.com, for example, they have over 100,000 customers. They're the leader in this space. In a way, they invented the cloud offering software as a service. They were the first one to do it successfully, and they did it with such success that they are now the de facto standard for CRM, which stands for Customer Relationship Management. Siebel used to be the on-site, on-prem vendor for that, and now anybody that is in that space recognizes Salesforce.com as that leader. Workday is HCM, and I'm throwing a lot of acronyms out there, but Human Capital Management. It used to be ruled by PeopleSoft. Workday found a better way to deliver that, and they have some very large customers, DuPont, HP. They had a very successful IPO last year in 2012. And they're actually offering other software as a service within the Workday brand because of the success they've had with their HCM product. NetSuite, a GL product that competes with the big boys, if you will, SAPs and the Oracles. They really focus on the mid-market, but they are very successful, over 16,000 customers. And, you know, it just shows you what facets of the world, what facets of the organizations, the enterprises are recognizing the cloud, the benefits the cloud offers, and who's willing to do that, from finance, from HR, from the sales departments, and so forth. Now, lastly, you know, I would be failed to mention that Host Analytics is the leader in EPM, Enterprise Performance Management. We are recognized on the Gartner Magic Quadrant as a leader in that area. That's an analyst firm that recognizes vendors for what they do well, and we're the only cloud-based vendor on the Magic Quadrant. And for example, you know, we have some recent examples of where we replaced Hyperion and Oracle or other big vendors. Sanmina Corporation, based in California, they're a multi-billion-dollar manufacturer, and we replaced Hyperion Planning and Hyperion Enterprise with Host Analytics. Mirion Technology, I mentioned about the audit fees. They had three major vendors. They had IBM Cognos, FRX, and Microsoft Management Reporter, and they replaced all three of those with Host Analytics. And the list goes on, but the point is there is a big shift for the market to go to the cloud, and the cloud is a modern way to deliver software, and it's transforming the enterprise. Now, why are customers going with the cloud or software as a service? I think it's an important question to ask, and you know, Forrester did that. They did a survey, and they wanted to find out why people were choosing software as a service. And surprisingly, the biggest reason was improved business agility. I'm a little shocked by that. I think it's a good reason, but I was thinking it would be the lower cost, the speed of implementation, the things that I know for certain are part of our offering. But what people were tired of was the rigid, overly complex on-prem systems that never get upgraded because nobody has time to do the upgrade. So they're on an older version. They're not recognizing the newest features. Where with a SaaS software, you're always on the current version. You have improved business agility. They're designed for the business user to leverage. So in our case, the finance team. In Salesforce, the sales team, and so forth. But the point is they're designed to be managed by the core business. That gives you improved focus rather than focusing on things that IT needs to be involved in. The business can manage that technology. But the speed of implementation is a facet there you can see, as is faster releases. Imagine you're in a system and you're always on the current release. We do a quarterly release where you'll see updates each quarter. They're rolled out in a very process-driven fashion, so you're not surprised by anything. You can test it in the sandbox before it goes live, and usually they're very much they're enhancements that are everybody enjoys having. So it's just very nice to be on that newest release. And then, of course, there's lower costs, and you can control those costs over time with software as a service. So really what we're saying is mainstream companies of all sizes and industries are choosing Host Analytics Cloud Platform. From the fastest growing tech companies like Splunk and Pandora to global multi-million-dollar conglomerates like NEC. CFOs and mainstream enterprises are choosing the cloud. In fact, over 1/3 of our customers are public companies. And the cloud is really here to stay, and it's transforming the business as we know it today. So at this point now, I'm going to jump into the application and show you the aspects of the application and really how it could help you become and leverage it for your organization. So when I first present it here, in this case, what I'm showing you is I've already logged in as myself, Brad Mauvais, and my home screen is a dashboard. Now this can be configured differently for different users, but it's a way to visualize data. It's a way to present data for any particular part of the business, from operating expenses to revenue to across the organization, how each region's doing, to line charts on net cash activity. There's lots of options out here, and you can see 4 quadrants here. I can scroll down. There's more below this. I have different tabs across the top as well to show you different aspects of this dashboard. These are interactive. In fact, this one is showing me red. Something's not performing the way it should. I can drill in on it and get very specific details around what this metric is showing me, and tell a story or run a report and present it to management of why things are the way they are. So this is just a quick view, a morning cup of coffee. You might glance at this to see how the business is doing, and then you can go in and drill into different aspects of the business. One area I do want to start with today is reports. So, I've been in your shoes. I was in a finance organization called AIMCO in Denver, Colorado. We managed our budget by Excel. We had a long cycle time to get ready for the budget. The process to get it was very manual, and the reporting at the end was difficult, if not impossible at times. So what I used to joke about was our process was like a homework assignment. We'd all spend all this time on it, but once it was done, we'd put it away on the shelf and not look at it again. And the reason we did was the reporting was difficult to get out of all the Excel spreadsheets that we put together. They were great models. We had used Excel just like any Excel guru could. But what I found with Host Analytics is the ability to get the data out. And I'm going to start with more of a complex report or a presentation. We got to the point where we did monthly presentations in PowerPoint with our analytical data, and that's what we can do here with Host Analytics. So quickly, I went to the File cabinet. I'm clicking on the month-end board presentation. It's a folder, a report that I have out there. To run it, I just click on Preview. You'll see notifications here that says it's running. As it runs on the server very quickly, but I want to point out what it is. This is a report, a comprehensive report with text and language with statements and reports to combine and tell a story to the board or to my manager. What happens is I can combine different things here. If I click here, you can see I have text over here to the far right that I can include in my report. I can also include data right from the Host Analytics environment. Here's my notification that the report is done. I'll run that in one moment. So here's a dynamic report I'm pulling right from the Host Analytics reporting environment. So this includes my actuals from my GL, any budget or forecast data I would like. This, in fact, is an income statement budget to actual. I have my balance sheet, and I have other activity here. Let's go ahead and click here and run this report. It gives me a dialog. I hit Open. And now that it's open, I can put it in presentation mode. So this is a PowerPoint deck automatically created from Host Analytics, leveraging several sources of data, several different types of data, and it gives me this overall report. So quickly, I'll just walk through a couple of these pages. There's an agenda slide to outline what's coming up. Here's a title slide. Here's that language slide that I had. Now, one unique thing about this is we can leverage variables in here. If this 64% was calculated in the environment, I can leverage that as a variable and maybe refer to it multiple times in the document. And if that changes from 64% to 75%, automatically it will reflect that in the document everywhere I reference that variable. So there's automation techniques you could put in here. Here's my income statement, budget to actual report embedded in PowerPoint so I could present this to management. I might have graphs as well, a balance sheet, more discussions. I'm sorry, I may have gone a little fast there. A balance sheet where you can embed reports such as that, further discussion points, more language about how the company's doing. And this last piece right here is it's a graph, but this was an Excel graph that I incorporated into my report. So I don't know how often you're doing a report and you have all your data together. Maybe you ran it from your ERP, you ran it from this system, but you need to put it all together. That's what ERM, Executive Report Manager, allows you to do. It allows you to take reports, yes, some of them are in Host Analytics, some of them may not be, and incorporate them into a single report and have the output done as quickly as I've done here. So I wanted to start with an end game, like the end report maybe you do at the end of the month for your management. And that was what the purpose of this part was. So that's an example of being able to run a report directly from the Host Analytics environment very quickly with the most up-to-date data and incorporate, in this example, I'm incorporating an Excel file from my system, my laptop, into the presentation. So not only does it have to be Host Analytics data or graphs from Host Analytics, but it could be data that you gather from other individuals throughout the process. Now, with that said, I think it's a good time now to kind of transition from reports. We're going to cover more later. That's more of an advanced report, into how do we get the data into the system? What are some ways we can manage that? So here on my screen, I'm presenting to you the budget control panel. This is where individuals, whether they be in the Office of Finance or in operations or in the field, as I like to say, can contribute to a plan. They enter the budget control panel. The first thing they would do is select the version or scenario that they're going to work on. I have, in my example here, a few choices in my drop-down list. I'm going to stick with 2013 budget. Then my budget hierarchy defines where I can enter data. Now, this is where security applies. Security might apply to an individual that's only responsible for sales. Well, they'd only see the sales departments. Maybe I'm only responsible for the sales in California or a particular region. I would only see that in my drop-down list. I wouldn't see anything else. So you can divvy up your hierarchies to individuals as you see fit, and they only see the areas of interest or the areas that you want them to see or have control over. So as I look at my sales for California, I'm going to start with OpEx Basic template. With that, I can go into input mode and open that up and enter data, change the model, or change the data in the system. When I bring up a template, you can see that it may look like Excel to you. And that's because we're leveraging the Excel grid over the web. And the reason we do that is we feel Excel is the de facto standard for the Office of Finance. Although standalone Excel has its issues. It's not tied to a database. You have to aggregate that data. You have to pull data into it. So we leverage a database behind here. So what you see here is some compare scenarios in the middle, for example. My 2012 actuals, this data is coming directly from the database of Host Analytics, which is tied to your database that houses your GL data, your ERP or GL. So this data is directly tied to your GL. I can click on it, and it's going to expose it by month. So I can see my actuals by month in this template, this model that allows me to enter my operating expenses. To hide those, I just click on that hyperlink, and it closes those columns up for me. Now, if I click here, my summary for 2013, I want to show you that the formula bar is Excel. We're leveraging Excel syntax as well. So Office of Finance runs this system. They are responsible for the system in most organizations. They create these models that they distribute to the field. And the best way to do that is to leverage your Excel knowledge. So you can put in drivers, you can put in sum functions, you can put in any formulas that you can think of to help derive different results. But keep in mind, you're not putting in anything that aggregates data. The system will aggregate the data. The database will allow you to do that. Let's take a look at that. So anywhere that's yellow here is where I can enter data. Everything else is locked. If I try to, I get this message that says the range is locked and therefore read only. So there's controls in place. It's a true template model that you would leverage and make sure people only enter data where they're supposed to. If on the particular line, if I want to enter data, I can enter lines here going across. You can see it totals up right away. I can see the results as I do this. I can enter formulas. I can enter data. I can enter amounts month by month, as you can see there. But there's some quick ways to enter data as well. I'll go up here to my travel for hotels. If I wanted to enter $12,000 or $120,000, whatever, I can enter that. It automatically spread it across evenly across the horizon over here. Why did it do that? Because that was the spread value that I pre-selected for that line item. But those are available up here. We call these spread values. I can select any number of ones that I have available to me. And you, as the person that creates these templates, can create any number of these spread patterns. So if you don't like one of these, create a new one. It's okay to have it as any number of these that you want. But really, if you have seasonality to your business, these really help somebody quickly enter that data and spread it across that horizon. I'm going to do Control-C, Control-V, so Control paste, cut and paste, excuse me, or copy and paste in this case. You could right-click and do it as well, but that functionality exists. So that 12,000, I'm spreading it. It's still 12,000 total, but you can see I'm spreading it on a 4-4-5 pattern based on this weekly spread pattern. Again, I can change that up here as well. A lot of people like to trend data. They know what their actuals were for the prior year, and now they want to trend off that data. To do that, and you can do it for multiple columns. I'll highlight these two columns together. I can use our other toolbar called Forecast Methods. With this toolbar, what I can do is go in here, select a method. I can select a percent. It could be a -3% if I'm trying to reduce my expenses, and I could hit go. It automatically spread for these two rows that I highlighted the actuals across less 3%. Prior year actuals, current year or current budget numbers, less 3%. But you can see it didn't do it evenly. It did it by month. So it took the fluctuations by month that I showed you prior and did the calculation based off that. So it quickly can trend data. You can do a whole model that way if you want by highlighting all the rows, -3%, you're done. Hit save and you're off and running. So a lot of quick techniques to enter data and allow you to manipulate your plan. And these are for end users. Anybody can understand this and quickly enter their data. Now there's two more things I want to show you on this template that I think are particularly interesting and very useful. One of them is called line item details. That's the ability to do more, put in more data around an account. So subledger detail, if you will, you might consider it, or just the ability to specify exactly where you're going to spend money. I'll pick one in particular, dues and subscriptions, and I'll click on the L. That stands for line item details. It brings up a grid, a secondary grid, where I can add as many lines as I wish. The yellow is where I can enter freeform. So for my budget line item, 6704, that's my account in my GL, I'm going to enter, dues and subscriptions, I don't know, magazines, and maybe I'm going to spend way too much money on magazines, but I'm just putting in examples here. And maybe, newsprint or I don't know, whatever else I might be getting for my employees in this organization, I can do that. The point is, though, like professional services or accounts where you spend a lot of money, you might want more details instead of a large amount there. The person can come in there and specify exactly where they're going to spend that money. Not when, when as well as to whom and where. So you can get very descriptive in the descriptions. Once I hit the Save button, it's going to save those details, and it's going to populate the grid with the totals there as well. You can see over here it's now white, indicating, and green over here to the far left, indicating I have those line item details there. And you can deploy that anywhere you want in these models, and it just gives you more information, which I find is important. When you're 5 months down the road and you're looking at the budget to actual report and it's off The more information you have to help explain why it's off. Is it a timing issue? Did we spend too much? Did we do a new initiative that we didn't plan for? You know, is the business going crazy and we just needed, you know, revenues increase, so expenses need to increase to keep up? There's always a story, but you need the information to tell that story. And if people put this in there, or you collect that data, then you're going to have more information to help tell that story. Another means to that end is notes. And right here you can see the end is highlighted. That means I have a note there. If I click on that, we can look at the note. You know, you can type in text here. You can even format and apply different things to it, but you can tell a story. And that story, you know, in language, it could mean a lot to somebody looking at this down the road. You could also include attachments, which I think are important. So attachments is the ability to include any type of attachment, and you can view them right here. This one's already loaded. I can click on it and see this JPEG, which is a scanned-in invoice. But I could also attach any other type of file I wish. I can browse out to my folders, attach that file, and it really, once I load it up, it becomes part of the Host Analytics environment, so you can leverage that for reporting in future periods and so forth. So, you know, this is some examples of being able to leverage the templates for collection of data, to manipulate a plan, but also to collect aspects of the plan that maybe you're not collecting now or would be important or are hidden in a Excel comment field that you never see because it's so far buried in the models. Or, well, these reports this data is in the database and readily available for you to view and to leverage throughout the process. To save my data, I click here. If I didn't save that, if I didn't click there, it would remind me, just like Excel. It doesn't want you to walk away from some work you've already done. And then I can click the arrow and come back to the budget control panel. Now, at this point, you know, there's a few things I can do here. As an end user, I can move on to another template. I can enter data for another aspect of my plan. I could trigger workflow and move on from that as well. So some different things I can do. So I thought for now, though, I do want to show you a template that has a little bit more meat to it, if you will, some more driver-based functionality, some things that the other one just didn't have. So I'm going to go here quickly to this one, Sales Golf Tour Performance, and I'm going to go to input mode here. So the first template we just looked at was operating expenses. This one's focused on revenue. Now, revenue means a lot of different things for a lot of different people. Different organizations recognize revenue differently or sell a service versus a product. So keep in mind, this model is not particular for you necessarily, but it's a great example of what we can do in a model. This model has several different sections, and it incorporates different things to drive different results. By that, I mean, when I brought this up, the first thing I'm looking at is different products that I sell, that I represent in this organization. And the first area is how many units I'm going to sell of those different products. So I can come in here, and you can see it's all yellow, so I can manipulate these numbers as you see them here. And that's going to drive my revenue. My revenue happens to be the next section down, my gross revenue. My gross revenue is based off my units, as indicated above, and built-in pricing. Where is pricing? Well, you can't see it here. It's part of the model. I'll show you in a moment. But if I click here on January, my revenue for drivers, you can see an Excel formula. It's pretty simple. It's taking my revenue above, my units, excuse me, to drive revenue, and it's looking at my prices down below. So I'm going to arrow down quickly here and show you below what I'm talking about. So down at the bottom of the template in a gray font, I have my prices. My prices are read-only. I can't change them because they were given to me by the marketing department in this case. They were responsible for prices. They indicated that in a different template. So they had global assumptions, and they said, here's our pricing for these different regions. Let's put it in this one model and then leverage it in other models. And I know this is coming from somewhere else because, not because it's grayed out, but because of the RA. The RA is an indicator in Host Analytics of a reference account, the ability to use assumptions from one model or place to another. So when I clicked on that, it even tells me where it came from. It came from the company 2010, the department marketing. They're responsible for prices using the prices golf template. So it traces back where this data came from. I may or may not have access to change that data. In this case, I don't. The marketing department is responsible for it, but I can see where it came from and what they were thinking. So Therefore, now I can leverage their prices in my model, and that's what I'm doing. I'm driving revenue from that. Now, to make this model even a little bit more comprehensive, I've included a discount percent. So this is my gross revenue, but I want to get down to my net revenue. So I have a discount percent, and maybe I do this, this one's by the whole region, but you could break this down by customers and by, different dimensions, as we like to call them, or areas of the business that make sense to you. So this is one example of being able to do it at one particular level, but there's different ways to skin the cat, if you will. So, this isn't the end-all, be-all template. It's not for everybody, as I said before, but it's an example of that. So here I'm applying some discounts. That feeds into an account called discounts, and then it drives my net revenue. So just an example of ability to take a template a step further than what we saw before and apply some language and math to it to derive different results. And in this case, I'm driving, 3 different impacts to my plan: my gross revenue, my sales discounts, and then my net revenue is all being derived from this template. But it's doing it in a factor that I get to capture my units, how much I think I'll sell, and what discounts I'm going to apply to that. So, the analysis that I could do against this is far-reaching. It's not just a gross revenue number, and I don't know where the details came from. I have the details, and I can analyze that as I go through the planning process. So I want to leave time for Q&A at the end. So what I'm going to do now is just introduce workflow. So as you introduce this to more people, make more people accountable in the organization, it helps to have a process to collect this data. So as a user, I may be done with my templates, my models here, my plan. So I want to submit this to my manager. Well, built into Host Analytics is ability to do that. So as I select forward here, I could submit my plan, and I could tell my boss I'm done. I can send a message. It's stored in the historical approval history here. It puts the person stamp, the time and the date, and as well as their message. As soon as I hit OK, a notification goes out to my boss that I've submitted my budget and that he or she can approve it. They would get that via email through the normal email channels. And it's the same time that it's done all that notification, it's put me personally in view-only mode. So now I can't input to my models. I'm in view-only mode. So I don't submit a moving target to my boss. In this case, Ellen would receive that email. That's who is the approver. And you could have multiple people as an approver as well. But this is a capability to manage that process. And it has supply notification of who's in what stage of the process. You can see over here in the far left that now this has been submitted with that arrow, and the rest of these, since I have access to the whole hierarchy, I can see them, are in a work-in-progress state. So there's indications, there's reports you can run against this if you have a lot of people involved, and you can find out where they're at in the process. You can see that the approval process can go from forwarded to approved. It could always go back a step as well, so you have iterations that can happen and so forth, and control that process. Now, we have 10 minutes or so left of demonstration time, and there's a couple things I want to show you or talk about. And one of them is the ability to do rolling forecast and supply that analysis to those numbers. We have a lot of customers doing that, and one of them, Check Into Cash, a company, what they said now that with their processes and with having Host Analytics in place, I quote, they moved from budgeting to planning, end quote. What that means is now they're not just going through the motions and creating that budget, but they're actually doing a planning cycle with forecasting processes with all their stores to find out where they're going to shoot, what they're going to hit, and where they're going to do it. And Host Analytics enabled them to do that with processes and so forth. So quickly what I thought we'd do is just walk through the process to create a new forecast scenario. So I'm going to maintenance scenario setup. And what this did, you can see all the scenarios I've created prior to this, but I'm going to go to the plus sign and create a new scenario quickly. We'll call it 2013 Q2 forecast. I'll just call it that. I could give it a long name if I wish. The fiscal year the 2012 actuals. You can call this whatever you want, prior year actuals. Whoops, 2012. Let me get rid of that one there. Now, the reason I'm showing you this is I've used other systems in the past, and this was literally a 3-day exercise with other systems because, but being a SaaS vendor, we can do it all with one screen, walking you through the process and allowing you to pick and choose what you want and create that scenario. I'm going to create this new scenario. It's a forecast scenario. That gives me a projection start date, so I can blend my actuals in with my forecast that I'm going to present. Here, what we can do a Q2, so we can start it, in April, and that automatically down below here, you can see, populates the first 3 months with actuals and opens up the next month to input. Right now, that input is none, meaning it's wide open. It's not preceded with any data. But guess what? I want to precede that with my prior budget. So I can do that with my buttons here. I'm just walking through this. I'm going to select 2013 as my precede. Now, what this does is reference scenario. It says, do you want all your templates to reflect this change? And I do. Do I want to bring over all the notes that people entered so they can see that in this new forecast? Yes, I do. All those line item details or subledger details, do I want those as well? Yes, I do. That's optional. You don't have to have that, but if you want that, you can select those there. And lastly, you can see it still says none here. How do I want to precede that forecast? I'm going to use my reference scenario. It automatically puts 2013 in there. I could change by period and select these and then have different things precede those periods as well. As quickly as I do that, I hit save, and it's going to create this new scenario. It takes 2 minutes to run this process. If I hit save there, it takes 1 to 2 minutes to run that process. 3 days in my old company, my old processes, 2 minutes here. 3 days to 2 minutes. It's quite the change. What it looks like, I'm not going to run it because even 2 minutes is too long for what we have here. So I'm going back to my budget control panel, and I'm going to go and show you what a forecast might look like. So here's my 2013 forecast for Q2. Same budget hierarchy. I'm going to go to the same template we started with, OpEx Basic. And as I open this up, what you'll see is the same template we started with, but in this case now I have 3 months of actuals blended in, automatically pulling the actuals from the GL, can't change them, but it gives me that starting point, those actuals. And outlining beyond that, I have my yellow where I can enter data. Any preceded data would be there. Any data I entered in my budget would precede this because I asked for that. You can see it did bring my notes over. Here's that notes that I had before and the invoice that I had scanned in as well, plus the line item details came over as well. The reason it would take 3 days in my old company was somebody had to create the scenario in the database, a DBA. Somebody would have to populate that scenario with all the appropriate data, so they'd run all these scripts, and it would take a long time to validate the data. The third person, or the third thing that would have to be done if it was the same person, was somebody would have to go into the templates and make sure they can read the data correctly. So they'd blend in the actuals, and they'd open up these forecast periods, and they'd have to do it for every model that we had out there. And the more models you have, the longer that took, and so forth. So we've taken all that effort and put it into a wizard and said, here, what do you want to do? Select these buttons, select some criteria, hit save, and let the system do the hard work for you. So that's just a quick takeaway on what forecasting would look like in your organization. So you can do that obviously monthly, quarterly, how often as you wish to make that happen for your organization. But to round off and to finalize this presentation portion of the presentation is to talk about reporting. I think reporting is the #1 thing that people get out of the system, is the ability to quickly run reports, perform that analysis, and so forth. So I went back to the file cabinet. The file cabinet is derived of different folders. I have access to everything. Other users would have access only to the reports that you grant them access to, either by name or by role, and so forth. But what I thought I'd do is go to my favorites and just show you a couple different types of report. One of them is a simple as you can get ad hoc type of report where I can drill in and see my numbers, perform analysis against that number. So in this case, I'm looking at just my operating expenses by category, my actuals to my budget with a variance column. I can drill in on this by selecting or clicking on the plus sign there. It drills into my account level detail. Here you can see I have total travel account. I have actuals of $334,000. But I might be scratching my head going, man, I don't remember spending that much money, or where'd that number come from? I can double-click on that. You may have seen the indication that said you can do so, and see the transactions from the GL that make up that $334,000. It's a smart grid. It knew I was on account 6201, so you can see here it brought up records only for 6201 for the Office of Finance, which is what I'm focused on as well. Here I have 179 records, which is a lot of detail, but this is the ability to drill in and see the transactions that make up your OpEx expenses, your revenue, whatever it might be. You could make this available to users so they don't have to log into the ERP or ask you, what are these numbers? They can have quick access to that as well. So, that's an example of being able to drill in. This report gives me the flexibility to turn it on its side and slice and dice it. But instead of doing that here, what I'll do real quick is create a new report. So I'm going to go back to my file cabinet. That report stays open if I wish, and I'm going to go to New Report. Within 3 clicks, I can create a new report, and I just want to show you the power of being able to do that and what it means for you as not just a finance person, but as an end user could do this as well. So here's a blank screen. I can define what I want in my columns going across the report, what I want in my rows going down, and what I want to filter on in my report, my page options here. These dimensions are what are, you may have more or less in your environment, but these are things that you can measure your business on. On top of that, we have this concept called report sets. Report sets allow you to quickly create, for example, you might have what you define as your income statement or your P&L, and you want that to be consistent between all your reporting entities. So you can create a report set that reflects what that looks like and then leverage that in multiple reports. So if I want to create a P&L here, I can go to my account report sets, leverage my income statement base, and put that in my row set. So I want columns going, or my accounts going down the rows, excuse me. And maybe I want to do a BVA, I want to do a variance analysis here. So I can come down here and I can look at my different report sets under my measures, and you can see I have one for quarter to date, year to date, and here's the one I'm looking for, my month to date. So actual versus budget, month to date. I select that, drag it to my column. That's all I need to do, and I could run it and have a highly formatted report here. So as I select run here, it creates this report. Now this report already might be something that I run every day, so I don't have to recreate it. I'm just showing you an example of drag, drop, create a report. In this case, I created a highly formatted variance report showing my actuals to budget for the entire company. If I want to filter this report, I can do that as well by clicking here, peeling back the corner, if you will, and being able to see the selection criteria. If I want to filter this by company, I can drag my company over to here, click on the company box there, and it brings up the hierarchy that represents my company. I can drill in. Now, keep in mind, again, this user has access to everything. You could have users that don't see everything, can't run reports for everything. It's controlled by their security, and they only see the things that you give them access to. But they'd be able to surface through the hierarchy, but only see the things that you give them access to and select those. In this case now, I selected and filtered this report on the 2100, the DW Golf U.S. entity. So now I'm only seeing my budget to actual for that particular entity. So I know I went quick, but I wanted to give you a good highlight of the automation and the techniques that Host Analytics can offer you. So with that said, Carlo, I'm going to now go back to the presentation.
Thank you for that, Brad. I really appreciate you sharing that with our audience. And I believe this is still one of your slides.
Yes, yeah. Thank you. What I want to do now is turn it over to Carlo for Q&A, but I want to first thank you for attending today's webinar hosted by Host Analytics and give you a brief overview of what we can offer enterprises of all sizes and all shapes within the Office of Finance and what we can offer.
Fantastic. Thank you, Brad, for taking us through. Your system is very robust and obviously has a lot of items that unfortunately we can't cover in too much detail, but I really appreciate the great job you did do today. And as Brad has mentioned, I will open it up for Q&A, and just as a reminder, if you have a question and you would like to have that answered by Brad today, please ask it via the questions box within your GoToWebinar control panel, and we will get to as many as we can. So just to kick it off here, Brad, and kind of going through a little bit more on the forecasting process. So can the application handle rolling forecasts, and if so, how does it work?
Yeah, good question, and I highlighted that in the demonstration, but the way rolling forecasts work is we are able to take the data, blending the actuals in with the forecast, and that forecast could be as long as you need it to be. You know, some people do to the end of the fiscal year. Some people do a rolling forecast, as the question mentioned, rolling into subsequent fiscal years. So you can define what that period of time frame is, incorporate the right amount of actuals that you want to leverage for the current fiscal year into the models. The system will allow you to define that, but once you define that, the system will do the work to create those models and to manipulate the data in the correct ways. And really the data isn't being manipulated in an adverse way. It's really being presented to you by leveraging the different scenarios or versions presented in the database. So actuals are always actuals. Budget's always budget and can be locked and loaded. A forecast is a new version or scenario that we allow users to pre-populate with prior period data and then have users manipulate and create a new forecast based off that data, store that, then you can run reports against any number of those scenarios or versions against each other to see where you're performing or how you're doing across the board.
Gotcha, and thank you for that that response, Brad. I really appreciate it. So one of the questions coming through is in regards to the budgeting process and the model. You know, how does that work? Is that something that you guys provide a template for, or is that something you work with the customer to kind of build out for them? How does that process work?
Great question. So it is a process. It's an iterative process of us helping you guys define what you want the system to do. You can configure the system to work the way you want it to. So I showed you some examples today. Some of those are very common examples used throughout organizations, but everybody does something different. So we don't come with pre-built templates that you have to use. We come with pre-built templates that you can modify to make work for your organization. But of course, your GL, your chart of accounts are going to be different. So we leverage that in the process. But when we go through that process, it's so easy to build these. It's leveraging Excel and our interface that anybody can do it with, you know, there is a little bit of training involved, but once you have that background information, once you have the nuance of the tool, you can create these models. So we can help you, you can build them. It could be in tandem where we work together and build those. So there is an implementation process, but it's quick, it's easy, and it's configured for your organization. So you're working with things that you guys are familiar with and the field is familiar with, so you get the right results and the right user adoption throughout the organization.
Fantastic. I appreciate that, Brad. And just maybe one or two more questions just in the interest of time so we can get everyone back to their job here. And I know it's for some folks it's still month-end close. So one area around, this is more around security and kind of more you know, applicability. So since this is run on the cloud, is this applicable to not only kind of IE, Internet Explorer, but could you get to it if folks leverage Mac? So could you get to it from Safari?
Right, yes. So, you know, as a cloud-based vendor, you access our system through a web browser. We have apps for the Mac applications, including a Mac computer as well as the iPhone, or not the iPhone, the iPad. The iPhone's a little small to see anything, so right now we concentrate on the iPad and the Macs, but we have an application from the App Store that you can leverage to access the system. In terms of security, we're using state-of-the-art security. Security is our business. We're a cloud-based vendor. We have to be secure. People have to trust us. So our data and our processes, but more importantly, our systems are using state-of-the-art security, from encryption to any layers of security that can be applied. So although you're accessing it from a web browser, there is encryption and software in place to ensure that your data is secure, no matter where you access that our system from a coffee shop, from your office, from your home office, wherever that might be. You're going to be rest assured that it's secure.
Fantastic. And here's the last one, and I apologize to the audience members whose questions we are unable to get to, but we will work with Brad and Host Analytics to follow up with you immediately after this webinar. The last one is kind of a two-part, but they're kind of combined in a way. When you are working within the model and say you do change some of the information within the model itself, either it's an assumption or it's some data point, do you essentially have to click Save to have that input stored, or is there some type of auto-acceptance as soon as you change the data? And kind of the second part of that question, real briefly, Brad, is there some audit trail? So for whatever reason you do make a change that you're not happy with, you can kind of go back and track where you made that change by mistake.
Yeah, two great questions. So if you're in a particular model, the Excel grid models that I showed you, if you enter data, any calculation within that part of the model is going to be relevant right away. But to transition that into the database, you do have to hit Save. Now, there is other types of models. We have top-down modeling where you can look at your whole organization and adjust factors, and maybe you want to lower expenses by 3% across 3 different regions, but leave other regions alone. You can do that with top-down modeling, and that is done without Excel models, but using an engine that allows you to do that. So you can select different criteria and perform that function across the database. So that's done a little bit differently. But any of these activities that I'm talking about are all tracked on Audit Trail. So we have a comprehensive audit trail. It includes when people log in, what templates they launch, what models they change, what data they manipulate, or what reports they run. I mean, it runs the gamut from any function that you can run in the system. And it's not, I've seen other audit trails where they have all this functionality, but you can't read the data. Ours comes with the ability to run a report, to filter it based on different criteria or different users, and see exactly what happened. So the audit trail is not only comprehensive, but it's informative because you can read that data, leveraging our tool to see who's changed what within the whole system.
Fantastic. Thanks, Brad. And apologies we didn't get to everyone's questions. We will work with Brad and directly respond to you after the webinar. And I just want to remind everyone of a few last housekeeping items before we do wrap up. You will be prompted to take a short survey once this webinar concludes, and we greatly appreciate your feedback. Please also join us on Proformative.com to continue a discussion around best practices in your forecasting, planning, and budgeting process, and we're more than happy to continue that peer-to-peer engagement. Also want to take this time to let everyone know in the audience to take advantage of the early bird pricing for our second annual CFO Dimensions Conference that will be held in New York City in August 21st and 22nd. We're going to have some really interesting and thought leaders and world-class speakers sharing best practices and their journey. And I'd like to take this time to also thank Host Analytics and Brad for delivering the content, and really thank Host Analytics in support of their sponsorship and bringing this great content and knowledge that we shared today during our webinar. And now, folks, I'm going to close down the webinar and have you will be prompted to take the short survey. At that point, you'll be able to request an introduction to Brad and Host Analytics for more information, and you'll also have a chance to ask for more information around CFO Dimensions. Thank you to the audience. We hope to see you again at another Proformative event or online at Proformative.com. Have a great rest of the day, folks. Thank you.